How do you feel that you do in terms of describing what you need from a partner?
Yeah, I think again it comes from like that initial screening process. I feel like my expectations are to be matched. So I don't have any expectations of things that I cannot provide myself, and I really stand by that. I cannot stand when people say, "I expect this," and I'm like, "But you don't have that."
Respect.
I know that my expectations are not unrealistic because they've been met multiple times before. And so that validates that my expectations are not crazy, are not unreasonable. And if someone is not able to match it, that's not a me problem, that's an us problem, a compatibility problem, and keep it moving.
To me, it's a centerpiece of any time you're going to try to go out with somebody, you're trying to entertain somebody. That can be good for the beginning of the courtship process, but then also even once you're in a relationship, expectations will somewhat evolve, right? Because we're evolving throughout the relationship, right, as people. How do you feel that you do in terms of describing what you need from a partner?
Yeah, I think again it comes from like that initial screening process. I feel like my expectations are to be matched. So I don't have any expectations of things that I cannot provide myself, and I really stand by that. I cannot stand when people say, "I expect this," and I'm like, "But you don't have that."
Respect.
Right? Like
Respect.
that makes no sense. And so my expectations are I'm going to show up, and I'm going to be authentic, and I'm going to put my energy in, and I'm going to be caring and thoughtful and intentional, and that is what I expect. And my expectations have formed and evolved over the years because of my previous experiences and my previous relationships, right? I know that my expectations are not unrealistic because they've been met multiple times before. And so that validates that my expectations are not crazy, are not unreasonable. And if someone is not able to match it, that's not a me problem, that's an us problem, a compatibility problem, and keep it moving.
Okay. Can you give me some examples of some of the things that are really important to you?
Yeah, so I hate to tie it to like love languages, but like my main one is like acts of service, right? And so I will go above and beyond to like, if you're running around crazy today and I know you needed to pick something up from the pharmacy, like I'm gonna do that to show you I'm here to support you. And like that is what I expect, right? Back. I don't wanna have to say it. What drives me insane in a relationship is feeling like I'm dating someone who needs directions on how to be a partner. I just want an adult to show up as their whole selves and do what they would want done to them and care for someone like you would care for someone that you love. I don't want to have to give instructions and directions on simple things like that, right? I don't want to have to say, can you? I just want someone who just does, right? Like, because that's how I am. I love to plan a trip. I love to plan a date night. I love to do things. And I want a partner who does that as well so that I don't feel like I'm taking on like a motherly role of my partner.
I get that. Okay. Let me throw a slight curveball at you, but I do agree with that last part in particular. Because I think that when you are going to be intentional, when your partner is too, they're going to pick up on things and how you tend to like things to be done and try to match that, right? And I think you would naturally do that as well. The only curveball I would throw at you, because you mentioned love languages, which I actually think can be useful information. I don't think that they're like 100% spot on for everybody,
right.
but I do think it could be valuable information.
Yeah.
So you talked about, okay, like you prefer acts of service, right? So it means people doing things for you and it makes you feel like valued, loved, and appreciated. I am a physical touch and quality time number one.
Right.
Because to me, that's just the best currency that any of us have to be able to offer to somebody. But my point is that obviously, let's say it was me and you, so we would have different ways on how we would see that. How do you feel about, okay, if I know that the person I'm dealing with has a different way in how they express it, or at least how they would receive that, do you feel like you would choose to match that, or you would expect them to just see it the way that you see it?
No, absolutely. It's about matching, right? And all my previous partners, those are their two love languages. I feel like that's like the man love language, is this quality time and physical touch. I don't want to spend time. I'm like it's so awful. I get it from my mom. We're like, don't touch me. I don't want to be around you. I'm not quality time, but when I'm in relationships, I make that a priority because that is what my partner needs, right? We're meeting each other together where we need to be met. And so it's something to, are you willing to make the effort? Are you willing to try, right? We're not going to be perfect at everything right away.
Sure.
But that quality time, again, is not something like I could be alone every single day, see you once a week, and feel like we are doing great, loving it. And all of my partners, like like every day. And so I had to get comfortable with, again, boundaries, right? I'll see you like 4 days a week. You know, I'm going to make that effort, but also when it's me time, right? And finding that middle ground. But you have to be willing to put in the effort because I am, and that's the meeting halfway part.
Okay, I got you. No, and I agree with that part. That I wanted to make sure because I know some people, they have the idea of like, well, this is how I do things. So if you're going to come try to join my train, then you need to adhere to my
No, you
principles.
have to love people how they want to be loved, or else it's not love.
I agree. I wanted to clarify that, and also because I want the audience to catch that too. So when you see it differently, that's not a bad thing. But if you want to put in the effort and you want them to feel appreciated in whatever way that it is that they love to feel that, then you're going to try to match the way that they hopefully tell you.
Right.
So like, for example, if we're dating you, like, maybe we're going to take the quiz and like, I'm going to show you and we're going to explain it. Like, this is what acts of service means. And this is how I interpret it. And then these are the things that make me feel special. Right. And so then over time, I'm understanding that, I'm seeing, and then I'm trying to embody that. So it can get to a point where it's reflexive, but it wasn't reflexive because I wasn't innately understanding that's because you taught me that and you helped me see it from your perspective. And then vice versa. I'm telling you those things about me, and then you're putting in the effort to try to match me in the way that I prefer to receive that.
And it can change over time. And that's why it's important. And the communication is important because you can be quality time, this year. And in 2 years, you might really switch over. And now you're acts of service. You see me do, you were doing all these things for me. You're like, shit, that might be nice. Now I'm acts of service, right? And so that communication and adapting, I think one of the hardest things in a relationship is when you disagree or when things are different, it's like, it has to be a problem. Whereas we can just be two different people and we can respect each other for that.
Right.
And where can we meet and where can we align? I think if we disagree and our partner, we don't see eye to eye, it almost feels like personal. Like,
personal slight.
Well, how can you feel this way, right? And then you just beat it and you beat it and you beat it.
Like, don't change.
Right. But that's not what a relationship is about. The relationship is about two individuals, two complete adult individuals with their own lives and their own perspectives coming together, respecting one another, and wanting to have a partnership.
I agree. All I can do is second what you just said, because I think it's so important. Like you have to understand that anytime you decide to make that willful connection and opportunity to be with somebody, that number one, you got to start looking outside of you. I usually talk a lot about bias. Particularly when it comes to communication, for whatever relationship type you're talking about, because we all operate seeing the world from our vantage point, right? But when I decide to be with you, I have to understand that you don't see the world the way that I do. So I need to try to understand how you do see it and make it easier for us to find ways to communicate effectively together where we're not seeing ourselves as opposition or antagonizing one another, but how do we create, as you said, alignment? We both sort of want the same things. Maybe we thought we had different paths on how we were going to get there. So I also talked a bit about having a shared vision for the future. So if you want to have that longevity, and it may change over time, that's totally fair. But the point is that if I understand that you want this thing and I want this thing, and so we have that together, our approach may be different, but we're going to figure out how do we mutually make that work for us together. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, you know what it is. It's seeing the relationship and you and your partner as the team. And this is something that I've struggled with personally in my relationships. And I can hear my ex now saying, we're a team. Like, why do you keep forgetting we're on the same side, right? And that's how a true team, I don't do sports, but sports reference for you all. That's how a true team works. You're going to have different methods and different skills, right, on the courts or whatever y'all play on. But the end goal is the same. And you can still have respect for the way they play the game and your differences. But at the end of the day, you're a team, you care for one another, and you have that same shared vision. And that's back to, are we aligned with our values and our goals? That's the most important part for compatibility. All the rest, we can learn and we can grow and we can adapt if we're looking at that same goal.
No, I agree. And that's exactly why I think once you initially screen out sort of those people who don't have those things that come with you, then it's like easier to then craft what that vision would be. right? You probably have already started to discuss it a bit in the initial conversations, right? And then you just say like, hey, like, how do you feel about this? Like, I have a different approach on how I want to get there, but I know that I want these things. I know that I want to be married. I know I want a wife. I know that I want possibly 2 kids, right? And then I'm asking you about these things, and you're like, yeah, I definitely want the same things. Now we got to figure out timing and so on and so forth as we continue to build the relationship together. But we have a basic framework. So I like to try to say that in that way, because I think a lot of times we don't create that. And then we're kind of surprised that like we're not going anywhere. And I'm like, it's like if you just jumped in the car, no navigation and no destination in mind. That's cool sometimes if you just want to be present focused. Cool, you can be mindful. But when you're talking about for the future, you can mindfully drive. But when you're thinking about the future, like, you need to have some basic structure, some basic strategy of how am I going to get to where I want to go? And number one, where do I want to go? So that I can communicate that effectively to you. So I can ask you, how do you feel about that? What do you want? Making sure we both want those same things. And then when we have this basic idea, it helps us feel confident that we are to be able to integrate our lives together, which is the other step, depending on how long you go. So I know that, again, those are very, not necessarily complex ideas, but it is complicated to actually put it into action. But I think the more that we talk about that openly, then hopefully this puts us on people's minds. So maybe if they're in a relationship, you're thinking, I haven't had that conversation with my partner yet, then you should. Right. And if I am getting ready to date and I'm thinking about going out there, start incorporating that into the initial courtship process when you're going to talk to a young man or a young woman.
Yeah, and it can be uncomfy. You know, and I swear my sister hates me because she always calls me, and she's married. Her husband, I love him more than life itself. They've been together for maybe 6 years. I consider him a best friend, and she'll call and she's complaining, and she's ready for me to be like, screw him, like, charge on, at Knight's reference. And I will really say like, well, da-da. And she will at first get upset, and then she'll be like, you're arguing for the team, because I know that they both want to be married. And so what I'm arguing for is the marriage. I'm not arguing for her. I'm not arguing for him. I'm just saying, how can we find the median? How do we find the middle ground? Because what I care about is that you both want to be married, and that's the bigger picture.
Right.
It drives her crazy.
But you know what? But I respect that, though. It's putting the we before the me. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Simply said, but again, sometimes it's hard to keep that in mind when we're getting in our own feelings, and sometimes we don't want to listen, sometimes we don't want to communicate. Yeah. But to me, that's what it takes. Right. And not that this is a PSA for relationships, but I will say, life is already very hard. Hopefully you would agree. I think it's even harder when you go through it for a large period of time alone. Mm-hmm. And again, when I say alone, I don't mean that you don't have family or friends. I mean somebody that you want to build with. Right. And I'm not suggesting that some people don't want to do that. Maybe there are some. But I also believe that the vast majority of humans, if not all, we have some level of socialization that we want to be able to engage with. And in order to be able to do that, I have to start to learn some of these basic skills. If I don't, maybe I need to touch up or refine them if I'm kind of rusty. But I think these are things that are essential if you want to build to whatever that long-term relationship is for you. Mm-hmm. So. And
it's hard work, and the whole relationship will be hard work. So it's good to understand that from the forefront.
It is. But you know what? I would still make the argument personally, no matter how difficult it is, I personally think it's worth it. Yeah. I think it's better than trying to do life by yourself.
Better have loved and lost than to never have loved at all.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Especially when you talk about family dynamics, like, and you have children. It's way easier when there's a reason why children turn out better when they have 2 parents involved, whether they live together or not, than one. Because it's just hard. Mm-hmm. You just got to do the math, man. Mm-hmm. Financially, it's difficult. Time-wise, it's difficult. You're only one person.
Right.
When you got the other person that can lean on you. Mm-hmm. So anyway.